the foreclosure mess. Now some homeowners are stripping everything, including the kitchen sink, before the bank takes their house. And the Democrats plan a foreclosure freeze. Is it all just PR and politics before the midterms?
We got to give a special thanks again to Brian Sullivan for his help with his interview with T. Boone Pickens. All right, coming up, why some people are trashing their million-dollar homes. We follow the story and the money next on Fox Business. All right, when they lost their home to foreclosure, one cop and his realtor wife in California decided to trash it. KSWB's Walter McCall has been following the story from San Diego.
The old "if I can't have it, no one can" seems to apply here.
Sometimes, it's just like a hole in the wall, but other times the house is completely stripped, graffitied, holes punched in all the walls, so we've seen everything.
Gary Kent of RE/MAX estimates between 5 and 10% of foreclosures include some type of retaliation damage. He says nothing surprises him.
The most outrageous one that I can think of is somebody who stole the entire kitchen, and then after the escrow closed and there was a new buyer in the house, he approached the new buyer and said, "Hey, I'll sell you a kitchen," actually sold it to him and helped him install it.
The latest high-profile case of a homeowner trashing their house before the bank takes control of it is in Riverside County. Prosecutors say the homeowners, a real estate worker and San Diego police officer, took matters a little too far by ripping off doors and light fixtures, even sledgehammering expensive stone work and throwing trees into the swimming pool. The couple reportedly destroyed many of the improvements they made over the years. The Riverside District Attorney has filed charges against the couple and issued warrants for their arrest. It's a crime that could send them to prison for up to 4 years.
I mean, they took the walkway.
They threw trees in the pool.
All right, well, there are other examples and other foreclosure owners across the country that are gutting their homes and stripping them of anything of value, right down to, well, you heard it, the kitchen sink. Joining me now is realtor Dolly Lenz. All right, Dolly, this is crazy. How are these trashed homes, though, affecting the overall market?
Well, I think it's just expressing anger. Homeowners are really upset. They felt there was a promise made and a promise unfulfilled. And, they're going to trash their homes. They're going to fight back foreclosure any way they can, including hiring attorneys to argue with the banks, et cetera, et cetera. It's, what we're seeing is, I'm not going to take this anymore.
But what are they doing to the value then of the home is basically nothing by the time they're done trashing it. So what, they feel better?
They're underwater already, and they feel that since the promise wasn't made to them and nobody treated them fairly, I guess they feel they're not going to treat anybody fairly.
So are you seeing a lot of this? Are you seeing this in the New York City area?
I mean, I don't think it's widespread in that way in New York City, but I think that it is happening all over the place. It's just not widespread. It's widespread, I'm sure, in Nevada, California, all the places that are really hit by foreclosure.
Well, there's something else, too, and Dolly's right.
Dolly, we're going to bring in our panel. Go ahead, Senator.
Hey.
Hi, Doll.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, you've got the expert of experts in Dolly on this program.
I know.
I tell you. She's
I love Alphonse.
Mrs. Real Estate.
Hello, Dolly.
But Senator, is there, there's more going on here.
In California, in particular, they're what you call a non-recourse state. So the guy who took out the kitchen, right, he could do that. And you can't sue him, etc. And then he goes and he sells it back. It's not quite as bad, and that's why it's not as bad in New York, but people feel angered. And what you do have is you have squatters now. You have thousands out in Long Island, where I live in Suffolk County. I think the 12,000 houses that right now are under foreclosure. Some people are in there a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. They don't pay. They squat. And, of course, they neglect. And they feel they were sold a bill of goods. The heck with you.
Well, Senator, this is a sexy story in terms of what they did. The damage was incredible. But, the underlying point is that we should try to do everything we can to keep people in homes. Not because they'll go and trash a particular home, but because foreclosures create blight in neighborhoods.
But
I would say we should drive down values overall.
There might be a whole other angle to this, Christian, because as if trashing homes isn't outrageous enough, many people are saying that there's this whole other level to this foreclosure fiasco that's going on, because now we know the Dems are coming down on the banks, telling them to slow the foreclosure process down. Well, many are saying that Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, and all are putting a moratorium or a foreclosure freeze out on some of these homes to stop them being thrown out before the election.
I have to jump in.
Come on, wait, Christian, Christian, I cut you off. Is this a PR stint to keep people in their homes so that we can all go vote and then come Christmas, I'll throw you out.
No, not at all. First of all, banks are coming to the conclusion right now that so much of the foreclosure process is broken in terms of determining legal title in various chains that they can't even do this efficiently.
But we're talking dot and I's and crossing T's. We're still, there are
so
still
not true. People's homes are being taken.
But these are people that
bank
can't pay. But these are people that cannot pay their bills, regardless of whether the paperwork was filled out.
And they're going to be underwater for 40 years.
That they have title to the homes that they're taking.
Dolly, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, they're going to be underwater for God knows how long, these people. It's not like they're, you know, if you let them go till December or January, it's going to be fine. Guess what? It's going to be 10 years, if that period. So I don't know what they're doing. It's obviously convenient. It's convenient. Right. It's very convenient.
It was convenient for the banks to churn out 14,000 documents claiming that someone had it properly notarized, but it was different signatures because no one was looking at them.
Right. But if you haven't paid your bills, then you're not a homeowner.
Let me make one point.
You're not a homeowner if you don't own the home. If you don't make your payments, the bank takes it away. It's the same thing if you want to lease that nice Mercedes. Now listen, I feel my heart goes out to these people, but this is an entitlement mindset to a T.
If
he's a police officer, there we go. We're going to bring the age experience factor in. If you factor in the man's a policeman, listen, I probably make more than this guy. That's a very nice house. I couldn't afford that house because I don't live beyond my means.
How did we get into this mess? First of all, the biggest culprits were the bond rating agencies that allowed the securitization, the sale of these mortgages.
Right. Everything was AAA.
With AAA. They've gotten away with murder. That's Moody's. That's the biggest of them. And now, of course, they've turned it around, but they are responsible. Secondly, the banks had no stake in it because they sold these mortgages within 30 days. Thirdly, Freddie and Fannie Mac should not have permitted people who never had the economic ability to pay for it. This is your point.
But let's get
to pay for the home. And Dolly said 10 years. She was right when she said 40 years. Some of these people, they could never.
But Dolly, we got to talk about these foreclosures. 2.5 million homes in foreclosure right now. That number's not going to get better anytime soon.
No.
So this whole notion of putting off, today what you could do tomorrow.
But that's not why they're doing it.
What is that going to do to
it
housing
stops
prices?
the recovery. You're never going to get a recovery if we can't find the bottom. And the bottom has to be found by houses going through the process, being sold in a fair market, and now we'll have a new level. We won't ever recover without that.
Naomi, I know you keep pointing to the fact that it's misinformation, but here's the thing. The truth of the matter is these banks are being called out because they didn't fill out the paperwork properly.
Because they were churning out documents that were false and fraudulent
these people didn't pay their bills.
That is not correct, and you need to go back and look at the New York Times.
You're going to tell me those 2.5 million people all were on time?
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the reason attorneys general in 23 states have stopped this process in 23 states is because J.P. Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo have been fraudulently churning out documents to get for profit.
It's because we pushed people into owning homes they couldn't afford. It started with Barney Frank, who's at the forefront of the fix
don't blame Barney. It goes back to George Bush in 2001, encouraging our nation's financial institutions to come up with innovative products to get people into homes, because everybody wanted to see Americans.
Bill Clinton.
Fine, it can go back to whomever. The American dream was to put people into homes, and that's what government has done through Fannie and Freddie, at times very successfully, and this recent run-up, it's been a fiasco.
I'm not so sure what's successful about Fannie and Freddie. We can't afford that, right? We can't afford to pay for them ever. They can't afford to exist.
And I think we're on
they've managed to somehow escape the Financial Reform Act.
The attorney generals who are bringing states these actions, and by the way, technically they may be right in certain cases because certain forms have not been filled out correctly, but the fact of the matter is that it's great politics to say that I'm stopping the foreclosure.
But if you're the person whose house is being taken because
their house isn't being taken,
the signature.
No, their house isn't being taken in 99% of these cases.
I don't want to be the 1%. I mean, it's not okay.
I'm not suggesting that there should not be proper documentation, but I am saying, for the record, that 90+% of those houses they really have not paid for.
Well,
they don't have, and they're going to be foreclosed.
Let me get Stephen here.
We're talking about what's fair and what's not fair. What would be fair is the people now who have lived within their means, who paid for everything cash, for their cars, their leases, should now be able to get great deals on homes. The market is great for you, but we're going to prevent these people who've lived responsibly from having access to that. People just like my parents, and that's wrong.
97% of America's paying on time, Dolly. It's not fair to the rest of us.
Exactly. I was just going to say, what happens to all the people who did everything right, who followed the rules, who went without something else to pay the mortgage bill? What happens to them? What message are you
what
sending
happens to them when their neighbor's house is in foreclosure and it drives down their home value and it prevents them from having
but
the
if they don't
ability to
go
achieve
into
their financial
foreclosure,
goals?
they can't find the level.
Absolutely, that's wrong.
Dolly Lenz, you're the greatest. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, next. Is the government robbing our children's future with reckless spending? John Stossel's here with an alarming report you don't want to miss.